Russia is prepared to formally sign a draft memorandum on a peace agreement and freeze the conflict along the existing lines of demarcation. But why has the Kremlin, which just yesterday was demanding complete capitulation, suddenly become so accommodating? The answer lies not only in government offices, but also in the minds of ordinary Russians, where dissatisfaction is steadily growing. According to recent reports from Bloomberg, this proposal is closely aligned with the original plan put forward by Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, during his trip to Moscow, even before the Putin-Trump summit in Alaska. Based on information provided by the agency's internal sources, Witkoff told Putin that the United States government would actively seek for Ukraine to relinquish the Donbas area, which includes Donetsk and the neighboring Luhansk regions. If Russia agreed to freeze the conflict along the current front lines of the battlefield and abandon its claims to parts of the Zaporizhia and Kherson regions, the publication writes, as Bloomberg sources recounted, the day before Putin's trip to Anchorage, he gathered high-ranking officials at the Kremlin to hear their opinions. How do you assess this plan? Putin asked the assembled officials, according to people familiar with the course of the meeting. At first, they hesitated and remained silent, but then most supported the proposal, arguing that the war should end, according to reports from Bloomberg sources. And how do you assess this plan? Write your thoughts in the comments and we'll read them. At the same time, expectations of an agreement between the US and Russia at the summit were not met, even though Donald Trump eventually moved away from his earlier demands that Vladimir Putin accept a formal ceasefire to create space for peace negotiations. Witkoff stated that during the summit, the two leaders agreed that the United States would offer Ukraine security guarantees with wording very similar to Article 5, referring to the NATO clause on collective defense. The Russian government has not yet officially confirmed these reports. Witkoff also has made a formal promise in the past that he would not sign any peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia until the people of Ukraine feel completely confident that Moscow will no longer take up arms against them. Taking a similar perspective, British political scientist and renowned expert specializing in the affairs of contemporary Russia, Mark Galeotti, stated in his column for The Times that, after 4 years, the standard narratives regarding the so-called special military operation are no longer resonating with an increasingly dissatisfied and weary Russian public. Based on the information provided by him, this is the exact reason as to why Russian propagandists have started to issue increasingly harsh statements aimed at prompting the Russian population to actively support and participate in the war against Ukraine. In recent days, Russian state-sponsored propagandists have been actively spreading malicious disinformation, claiming that the United Kingdom and France allegedly plan to provide Ukraine with nuclear weaponry. These statements are absurd and highlight one of the key problems the Kremlin has faced since the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Galeotti recalled that information about the alleged plans to transfer nuclear weapons to Kyiv appeared in an SVR-RF report on the 4th anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine. According to recent reports, Britain and France are allegedly actively working on providing Ukraine with nuclear weapons and the sophisticated delivery systems to deploy them. According to the experts' detailed observations, Russian propagandists are actively claiming in their reports that Britain and France supposedly plan to provide the Ukrainian military with the French TN-75 missile, which features a warhead of 150 kilotons and is usually installed on a submarine. The SVR report states that British engineers are currently engaged in the complex process of adapting it for use in the Ukrainian arsenal. These claims have no sources, are highly unlikely, and even by the standards of a war in which all sides use outrageous propaganda, are unprecedented. The French embassy in Moscow called them a complete lie, while the British embassy condemned them as yet another piece of disinformation. But this incident gives an idea of the mood of Russian public opinion towards Ukraine, writes Galeotti. The journalist emphasized that even experts invited to comment on Russian media are talking about this implausible information.